Hello Internet, I'm the Disney Brain, and welcome to the first ever Nick movie review. Unlike Disney Channel, who's been making DCOMs for about 2 decades, and small screen movies in general for even longer than that, Nick is relatively new at the original movie game. They've made mostly specials out of established shows early on, but when the 2010s hit, that became a point where the specials were pretty much replaced with live-action TV movies such as Rags, Jinxed, and Never Gonna Review This, making their work now more akin to what Disney Channel had been doing for years. But are Nickelodeon original movies any good? Well, let's try and figure it out one review at a time. Spoiler warning now, you know the drill. With all that said, let's take a closer look at Swindle. So we kick things off right in the middle of a wedding, where it's clear that a great deal of craziness happened prior to this moment. But I'm not sure there was much of a point in initiating the movie with a flash forward. It doesn't actually add anything to the movie itself, other than make it very obvious that lots of stuff will happen eventually. But before we get there, we get our proper introductions to the main cast, and a pretty strong cast at that. The leads are Noah Crawford and Chris O'Neill, who some of you might remember as the goofy best friend duo from How to Rock. Noah portrays Griffin Bing, a big shot at his school who can apparently get almost anything for you. Chris portrays Ben Dupree, his best friend, whose problems later become the defining plot driver for this movie. We're also quickly introduced to big-time Nick stars such as Ciara Bravo, Jeanette McCurdy, Ariana Grande, and Noah Monk, force of habit. And, as we already know, they will eventually form something of a live-action Nickelodeon super team as a means to out-swindle a swindler. But before that, we meet Ben's dad, an inventor who just can't seem to get his inventions to work, because that obviously hasn't been done to death. But anyways, it's then revealed that because of his constant failures, Chris and the Dupree family will have to move away. This leads to his new trendy invention called the I Got It, punching a hole in the wall. The hole just so happens to house a Honus Wagner baseball card. To this movie's credit, Honus Wagner was a real-life Pittsburgh Pirates legend, so nice detail to include an actual card which would have actual value as opposed to just making up a name. Unfortunately, Griffin and Chris, and presumably most of the people who have watched this movie, didn't realize the value of what they had. Which brings us to Paul Swindell. I can't really stand how on the nose and blatantly obvious his name is, but whatever, minor issues. So, true to his name, he cleverly swindles the pair out of the card for $350, a sum close to 10,000 times lower than what we later find out it's worth. And when the pair later find out about the development, panic ensues because even with the money they now have, they would still need the I Got It to be a major success or Ben will move away anyways. With nothing left he can legally do, Griffin decides it's time to assemble a team and stop the forces of evil. Except what they later do is illegal, so they aren't exactly on high moral standing either. So, it's assembly time. First with Savannah, the actress, then Darren, the muscle and the wheels. That's bringing back some fond memories. And later, Amanda, the gymnast. They all at first seem reluctant to assist, but since the beginning of the movie has them all together fighting Swindell, that moment kind of falls flat, and eventually, through the power of money, they all are convinced to help. Now, a couple of film aspects leave a lot to be desired to this point, but now is really where Swindle hits its stride as a frenetic and goofy heist movie. The plan is to use Savannah and Darren to distract Swindell while he's out getting food. In the meantime, Amanda uses her athletic ability and one hell of a powerful throw from Darren to turn off the alarms in the store. Then, Chris and Griffin move in to help locate the card and take it back. But of course, things don't all go that smoothly, and when Swindell is actually in the store, the disbelief can be a little hard to suspend. But I did like the little things that this scene did. It smartly chose the iCarly co-stars to develop together as Savannah tries to get Darren more invested in acting, which produces some nice moments throughout. The mechanics of the alarm and how that affects the characters and their actions stay consistent throughout, placing our characters in a genuine bind until Ciara, who portrays Griffin's little sister Melissa, saves the day. But Griffin decides to leave the card where he found it for a pretty smart reason. Swindell would know exactly who took it, and since he was already part of a news broadcast while in possession of the card itself, selling it safely would be a difficult task. In order to do this right, they need to force Swindell's hand and make him give up the card. This leads to a brand new plan, where the team seeks to target Swindell at the Lakeshore Hotel auction, but first, they use Amanda to put the moves on a kid named Eddie, in an effort to acquire a red-haired Captain Cybertor, which is a rare item in their world, as directly opposed to the garden variety blue-haired action figure. And Eddie, of course, agrees because, well, it's Ariana Grande after all. Next, we get a montage of them preparing everything else they'll need for the heist, before ultimately arriving at the Lakeshore Hotel. What I really liked about this montage is how it wasn't overly obvious what the preparations would be used for specifically. This movie also shows and doesn't tell during almost the entire process, which I loved. And as ridiculous as it could be at times, I can't help but also love the dynamic present between Noah and Jeanette here. It doesn't always feel genuine in terms of character progression, but it always feels very authentic as far as two actors going nuts in improvised ways. I really wouldn't be surprised in the slightest if half of Jeanette's lines and screenplay simply wasn't in the script. With the prep phase done, the team then acquires the Crown Suite, without any form of identification somehow, and they set up their base of operations. Not surprisingly, the snake pit where Chris's dad plans to market his invention is in the same place. But even having said that, I still have no idea why they did it, because having Chris's father around literally changes nothing about the plan or the execution thereof. He's literally just taking up space. In any case, they set up the room and prepare for Swindell's arrival. And here's where the movie gets even better. Savannah and Darren sell Swindell the red-haired Captain Cybertor, while the rest of the cast messes with him, to the tune of bad room reservations, terrible food, and terrifying elevator rides. And then, Griffin uses a mask to disguise himself as Anton Lefebvre, an absurd French stereotype who plans to buy the Honus Wagner card off Swindell. Griffin, disguised as Lefebvre, invites Swindell to a complimentary massage, while Amanda repels into his room. Griffin then broadcasts that an associate of his, named Ivan Volkov, is looking for a red-haired Captain Cybertor, and now it's all coming together. So, Amanda switches the red-haired figure for a blue one, and Swindell, anxious to collect even more money, rushes to Volkov to sell it to him. Swindell then runs into Chris, but he drops the room key. This was also part of the plan, as now Swindell rushes up to the suite, only to have the truth revealed to him. He's sold an everyday action figure to a Russian big shot, and now he's in it deep. Unless he returns the card. But while the team is tossing around the action figure, it, of course, gets away from them and falls onto a wedding cake. So the team rushes through the hotel in an effort to catch up to Swindell, which finds the cast at a wedding where all manner of hijinks ensue, and now we're right back where we started. Swindell thinks he's won when he finally gets the action figure back, only to have a door ex machina pried away from his clutches. With Volkov now in his face and threatening his life, Swindell has no choice but to hand over the Honus Wagner card to the team. He escapes the hotel with what he thinks is Volkov money, but that turns out to be fake, and it's revealed that Volkov was Savannah's father the whole time, simply acting the part of Volkov. So Ben has the card back, ready to sell it to the highest bidder. Swindell is in debt, Ben doesn't have to move, and the team has their mindset on assisting the next victim of a greedy con man. An interesting setup for a sequel that never happened. And that's Swindle. So, what's the verdict? Swindle is the kind of movie that is very solid by the standards of the company that created it. If you're into the craziness, the absurdity, the wackiness, then you'll probably get a lot out of this film. The cast is a pretty well balanced bunch, all of them with varying levels of charisma, screen presence, and impact. Of the team members, Ben probably acquits himself the worst, only because he isn't really given much to do outside of being there. He doesn't have any practical skills that would be useful to the team. He's just the guy that the plot revolves around because stopping him from moving is the primary motivation for Griffin. The Nick veterans of Ariana, Sierra, Jeanette, and Noah all handle themselves very well here. Ariana gets to do a lot of cool things, but doesn't really have too much screen presence beyond one or two scenes. They didn't really give her too much to work with dialogue-wise, outside of being an attractive closet nerd, but even still, she's way better than Victorious. Ciara is basically playing Katie Knight here, and she could own that kind of role in her sleep, so of course she was going to be good here, even with limited screen time. Jeanette and Noah do really well, as I mentioned, portraying their respective roles as nutty actress and tough guy. They both play off each other very well, as to be expected, and both create some funny moments. And the development Noah gets as Darren here is pretty nice, although it seemed a bit scattershot at times. But Noah Crawford more than delivers in the lead role here. He's witty, charismatic, confident, and is a quick and effective thinker, both with planning and execution. He effectively keeps the gang together throughout even the most uncertain times through his ambition to keep his best friend from leaving. That having been said, I wish there was a bit more emphasis placed on their friendship, because it would have made that ambition seem that much more genuine as opposed to a good enough way to progress the plot. Swindle as a movie has a very Nickelodeon sense of humor. You can feel a lot of the same beats if you've seen enough Drake and Josh, Big Time Rush, iCarly, the list goes on. It really is a Nick movie through and through, and for some people, that may be too much on the zany side, but I think they made it work here because it felt a little advanced. I liked how they used dialogue and clever quipping to make jokes about trendiness fall right in line with the movie's constant playing of Call Me Maybe. It's the movie embracing and making fun of the idea that certain jokes will be dated really quickly here, and that kind of through line is a good indicator of really good writing. The kind of good writing I didn't think this movie would provide the first time I watched it. And the way certain plot points regarding the planning and the heisting are set up are absolutely the highlights of the movie. They did a great job here of downplaying many of those elements until they needed to be revealed later on. That having been said, a lot of stuff just doesn't work here. The screenplay outside of the planning and execution itself leaves a lot to be desired, since a ton of it felt limp and not a lot of it was framed in nuanced or interesting ways. And despite getting some really good performances out of the Nickelodeon Super Team, most of the characters didn't really develop at all save Darren. I thought that was a huge opportunity this movie missed out on to capture a bit of heart alongside the more engaging elements. All of this really stems from Chris being a lackluster character despite driving the movie forward in terms of his relationship with Griffin and his family situation. If more focus had been placed on those two things, the sense of stakes rises and the heist feels that much more important. or maybe even just swap out moving for something even more dire, like needing surgery money or something along those lines. They didn't even bother to delve into Ben's dad being at the hotel, and how maybe that could have led to Ben having a bit more faith in him going forward. That would have also been a tired trope just the same, but at least would have meant something. Also, there's no possible way that Swindell can legally be charged for hotel bills incurred by his fake daughter, especially a hotel that doesn't even check IDs, so that aspect is kind of broken as well. All in all, even though this movie was an hour and a half, the quick pacing really made it feel like there was a lot missing here to make it a more complete experience. It succeeds in basically creating Ocean's 11 fused with Sly Cooper and then painting it green to give it that Nick feel. It's also a really fun ride and one of the all-time best as far as this specific type of Nick movie goes, but even still, it could have been so much better. The parts that work well really are engrossing, but there's also no shortage of flaws both on the surface and just beneath it. But even given all of that, I still consider it a good movie and one of the better things to come out of the network in recent years, especially compared to what they've come up with since. An overall satisfying experience for me, but as I often say, the only way to know for sure is to give it a watch and decide for yourself. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this review, hit up that like button, sub for more, and share this heist everywhere. And don't forget to follow the Disney Brain on Facebook and Twitter for updates. Links down below. The coming days will bring with it the top 10 best DCOM directors list, and hopefully the next Ranger video list will soon follow. So, lots to look forward to. Until then...